Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Friday edition of Shields and Arrows. When I first started thinking about the prospect of doing a live show in which I address various issues, I wanted to ensure that we covered events that are current, so news, and exploring political matters as well. And one reason why I wanted to do that was because I wanted to give you and those who may find our ministry and watch the opportunity to hear somebody who holds to rightly dividing the Bible, that believes in the mystery dispensation, that doesn't have the emphasis on the jellical worldview, that is afraid to just be blunt, is trying to sugarcoat everything. And I wanted to give a true, rightly divided biblical position on all of these matters. And so I knew that when I did this show, I wanted to address those kind of issues. I know Dr. White, of course, we share this mutual site that we do work together on, which is Worshify, and then the platform there and our websites are powered by the work of Worshify and Nathan and everything that he does. So I knew that we already had an Ask the Theologian 100% theology, largely, even though he gets into some worldview things, but primarily theology focused. And certainly we cover theology. Yesterday I spent time answering questions, but I wanted to give the content of essentially what if a political commentator, a conservative political commentator, somebody like a Michael Knowles or Matt Walsh or somebody like that, if they were a right divider. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish. So, with that in mind, we're going to spend a good chunk of time initially addressing a very important cultural matter. And it both is in regard to local and national politics. We are not going to last as a society if we do not have justice. If the land is void of judges doing their job and seeing that the guilty receive swift and proportionate punishment for their crimes, we are not going to be able to exist. Because if there is no guarantee of accountability for those that transgress the laws of our land, we will have no society at all. There can be no trust. People will not be encouraged to obey the law because they know that they will not have to face consequences for their wrongdoing. And what we are seeing right now, I really do believe, is the curtain being pulled away, if you will. I know that maybe phrase is used a lot, but I'll go ahead and use it. Of the corruption that is just rampant in our judicial systems, both on a national level, federal level, as well as even local levels, county levels. And we had some hints of this seen a number of times. And there are times when cases are covered that may be more local, but they're international, or they're national, sometimes international. I think of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, in which he was put on trial, charged was murder, and he was admonished. Or is that the right term? I'm neither an attorney nor the son of an attorney, but he was found not guilty. And that was a very big thing, because really that was a clear-cut case of self-defense. That's just one example. Let's go to another example. And I'm not sure if I was alive yet, or if so, I was in diapers. The famous O.J. Simpson trial. we have seen times in which the justice system has been unjust. There are times, like Kyle Rittenhouse, where the right decision is made, but then there are other times when we see, no, there is a severe, corrupt aspect to the courts. Another good example would be Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin absolutely should not have been found guilty for first, second, or third degree murder. All the available information is clear. Donald Trump should pardon Derek Chauvin. I have two different stories I'm going to share with you today. Both are, I suppose, technically on a more local level. One is local to Oklahoma, another is local to Kentucky. But they are both going to show that there is injustice in our court systems. And I am heavily interested. Once again, I'll remind you, we used to have the banner that said defending the faith, the family, and the fellowship. That's underneath the tagline of almost all of our episodes, unless it's Theology Thursday. But if we want to defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship, we need to defend a culture and society that is functional, that is civil, that defends basic human rights. So let me start out with this story. If you are an Oklahoman, you have probably heard of this story. This is an Oklahoma story, but it's gone all the way to the New York Post. So the New York Post is reporting on this. And I'm going to show you the headline here. I'm going to try to work around an ad here. I know that y'all keep telling me there's a way to turn off these ads, but anyways. Here's the headline. High school baseball star who pleaded no contest to string of rapes walks free, sparking outrage from parents, lawmakers. This is a story out of Oklahoma. And you may be thinking, well, there's got to be more to the story, right? How could he be allowed to just walk free if there is clear evidence that he is guilty of committing these assaults? And also, he ended up at the end of everything pleading no contest, right? Not denying it. And that doesn't mean that he confessed either. No contest is one of those kind of squirmy rules allowed in the court system. I'm going to read the article to you. An Oklahoma teen who was facing nearly 80 years behind bars after being convicted of raping and assaulting two high school girlfriends has dodged prison altogether under a shocking sweetheart plea deal, sparking outrage among the victim's parents and lawmakers. Jesse Mack Butler, 18 years old now, he was 17 years old at the time, avoided jail time last week over the spate of sick attacks on these two 16-year-old girls in Stillwater in early 2024, including one that left one victim close to death after being choked unconscious. Initially, Butler, then 17, was charged as an adult and was slapped with 10 felony accounts, including rape, attempted rape, sexual battery, and assault. This is, now, when I first heard the story, the news is often, right, to report it a certain way. And so I try to at least consider the possibility, hey, we had a Supreme Court justice accused of all sorts of things. You'll recall Brett Kavanaugh. And is it possible that this is hey, he said, she said kind of thing? And also, the simple fact is, because fathers are failing their children, they're not teaching their sons and daughters to practice purity. And so when teenagers, because they are not being brought up well at home, and that's most of the time the issue. Sometimes they just, they give in to, temptation. They put themselves in a compromising situation they shouldn't have been in to begin with. But the point is, they will feel, guilt afterwards. Wait, that was wrong. And the reality is, They feel like they have been wronged, because in a sense they have, but at the same time they were truly willingly engaging in the activity. So my point is, when it comes to some of these allegations, there is always the question you need to ask, hey, is this really what they're claiming it is, or was this more of just an accusation levied without proof. This is not that. Let me explain and be very clear. This is not that. The clear evidence of these attacks is very, very present. It's very obvious. Now, this person, Jesse Butler, he pleaded not guilty to all charges, I'm reading from New York Post here, but later struck a deal with the district attorney's office to change his status from adult to youthful offender. So he initially pleaded not guilty, even though it's very obvious that that there was the crime done. But he made his plea, and then all of a sudden he switched his plea to no contest. And this allowed him all of a sudden to be tried as a youth as opposed to an adult. He was facing nearly 80 years in prison as an adult for these crimes. And yet, now you'll see how things have taken a turn. Butler, who is the son of a prominent local sports coach, switched his plea to no contest after a judge signed off on the deal. Under local laws, the youth plea deal meant Butler was sentenced last week to just 1 year of rehabilitation and community service, despite facing roughly 78 years in the slammer, according to New York Post, their language. It's appalling, the mother of one of the victims told Daily Mail of the slap on the wrist sentence. I received similar punishments for breaking curfew when I was a teenager, she added. It's a complete injustice to these girls and to future victims because unfortunately, statistically, it won't end. Not only are you giving a slap in the face to these survivors, you are potentially putting other women at risk by not holding him accountable. The mom of the second victim also ribbed the joke punishment. And the reality is there is medical evidence here. Here is a picture of one of the victims. Her face is blurred in the hospital. Clear signs of assault, of attack, of physical harm done. This is one of these things that's not. This is not up for debate here. Every indication is these girls were assaulted. As a matter of fact, as you go on and you read the rest of the article, I'll go ahead and read this part to you. The attacks on the two girls unfolded early last year when they each dated the sports star, according to court documents. The first victim told investigators that Butler repeatedly raped her and choked her when she tried to refuse during their 3-month relationship. Her doctor said she had to undergo surgery to repair damage to her neck after being choked, and that she would have died if the choking had lasted another 30 seconds, the court papers charged. So, doctors, there's medical evidence here. Now, once again, I guess you could, if you're really trying to be contrarian, you could say, well, let's see the records. Is this doctor telling the truth? But I am just telling you, it seems to me like this is all absolutely the case. This is not false narrative. This is not a smear campaign against this boy. He really, let's not even call him that. Let's call him this individual. I hate to use the word man because he's not dignified enough to be called that. Now, moving on. The other victim reported that she too had been choked until she passed out. Police later found a video on Butler's phone of him choking the girl. Once again, very clear indication that the stories of the victims is lining up with the available evidence. Oklahoma State Representative Justin J.J. Humphrey told the News Nation's Banfield that the entire saga showed the court system was corrupt. So with that, this is just one case, an instance of every single precedence based upon the crime. He should be tried as an adult, and he should be put in prison for a very, very long time, right? That's kind of at the minimum there. All right, I'm pretty extreme on some of my ideas behind law and order. How can anyone trust the court system if a case like this was taken down from being tried as an adult, being rightly sentenced to a very long time in prison. Maybe his life, depending on how long he lived. I mean, he's late teens now, 78 years, to now he's being tried as a youth, a year of rehabilitation community service. Punishment has to fit the crime. If this was a 17-year-old who committed murder, he would not be tried as a youth. If you want to stop the assaults on women, or just anyone of this nature, especially in regard to rape, the punishment for that must be so severe that people think twice about doing it. A great example is the federal laws concerning gun laws. If you accidentally have a gun that is a quarter of an inch shorter than what you're supposed to have, that is a 10-year minimum in federal prison. They have very, very strict gun laws that cause people to be very discouraged from ever breaking those gun laws. I'm not defending those gun laws. I actually think that most of the laws surrounding like the NFA and whatnot are unconstitutional, but that's a debate for another day. My point is, you are communicating that, yes, we believe that high punishment is a discouragement to those who would be tempted to break the law. What is more deserving of harsh punishment to deter people than the act of abusing women through the form of sexual assault, rape? If there's anything, and let me just be very blunt. Like I said, I am not afraid to just be very blunt in this. If that is not warranting of the death penalty, I don't really know what is. Okay? Like, I just don't. I really don't. Because here's my thoughts. I don't know, how moral is it to lock a person away for life? Should we do life sentences? I think that's an interesting question to have. When I think about the Bible, examples of judgment, justice being done, I don't ever really see examples and cases of life sentences in some kind of prison. Now, I'm not saying that justifies it or we should be putting ourselves back under Torah, but I'm just saying, I don't know where we got the idea that a life sentence is somehow the proper, justified, and correct approach to such crimes. Once again, he wasn't even technically being given a life sentence. He was being given 78 years. And then I don't know how parole would work. If he was really good for the first 25 years, then he gets out on parole. I don't know. I don't know those things. I don't see how this is not very clear-cut. Clear signs of evidence the girls were abused, the testimony of these two girls. He changes his plea to no contest. Not necessarily technically an admission of guilt, but he's not denying that he did it. I don't understand why we just can't carry out justice here. Do you not think that if there was the headline, let's knock it down and be a little bit more tame, okay? Be a little bit more tame. What if the headline read, Oklahoma teen sentenced to life in prison for conviction of rape? Do you not think that would maybe cause some to think twice? The potential of being caught, life in prison? Just a thought. And then you could substitute that sentence with something even more extreme, I guess, if you want to use that term, and think about how that might work. Brandon says the court system of today leads to good men behind bars because they are forced to take justice for their family. Yeah. Think about this. You're a good father and husband, and you read in Romans chapter 13 where the government is a terror to those that do evil, right? I believe that's the wording used there. Romans 13:1. And yeah, talking about the government, for he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. So, if that's the job of the government, and you're trusting in the government to do that, and then the government doesn't do that, what's supposed to happen? Should there not be justice done? And you know of such stories, the court failing, and then fathers seeing that the proper punishment is given. And then those fathers placed behind bars for doing the job that the court system should have done. It's very terrible. It's a sad, tragic thing. So I hope that as many people as possible raise a big stink about this. And at this point, I don't know. If this is how everything plays out, I hope it's appealed to a higher court. I hope that it's appealed. I hope that they're able to prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law, as long as he's proven guilty in a court of law. Sounds like he was going to be proven guilty, which is why he took this sweetheart deal anyways. Because if he wasn't going to be found guilty, then why even do this? I hope he's prosecuted to the fullest extent. And you know what? If that doesn't happen, then this is where I like being able to do this, because other evangelical preachers, I feel like, would try to just sugarcoat this and be super nice and say something about forgiveness and love and mercy. Two things can be true at once. Can that man receive the gospel, be reconciled unto God? Yes, he can. Absolutely. Should his social life effectively be over for now on? Yes. God has mercy in regard to man. Society cannot be completely merciful for someone that has committed a crime like this. Otherwise, society will not work. See, that's the difference. We're not living in the kingdom of heaven, folks. That's why doctrine matters. This is not the kingdom of heaven, and we are binding on earth what is going to be bound in heaven, loosing on earth what is going to be loosed on heaven. That was an apostolic authority given to the apostles to Israel, not for us today. And so, I believe it's, in the movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I can't remember the exact quote, but you may be in right standing with God, and God operates in a way that the world does not, because He is His thoughts are not our thoughts, His ways are not our ways. God's operation is in light of eternity. We have to live in a society. We have to live in a government and community. So society, if the government refuses, if the court refuses to do its job, his social life should be over now. No one should affiliate with him. He should not ever be able to step foot on a baseball field again. If he is not going to face proper judgment, then he should be working in some obscure job, not seeing the light of day by anyone for the rest of his life. That's my thoughts. And you may say that's not loving, that's not merciful. I would share the gospel with him. I would hope that he would believe it, assuming he doesn't believe it now. His conduct is not leading me one to think that he has much regard for the Word of God. So I hope that he's reconciled. But as far as justice, it must be done. And another example, once again, we've got multiple stories, unfortunately. Another example of justice failing to be done is this story out of Kentucky. Once again, just heartbreaking story. This one's from the Daily Wire. Kentucky man who brutally killed 6-year-old deemed nonviolent under state law. Ronald Exantis was released from prison 13 years early. This case, this gentleman here, in Kentucky, let's just go ahead and read the article here. The Kentucky man who killed 6-year-old Logan Tipton, 6 years old. My son will be 6 in a year and a half. I can't imagine what that father went through losing his 6-year-old son. I cannot imagine. Any of you who have children, just it's unbearable. This man who killed this child was freed 13 years early after state law labeled his assault convictions non-violent. He killed this child and he was considered non-violent in his assault, despite the brutal nature of the crime. According to investigators, Ronald Exantis, 42, broke into the Tipton family home in Woodford County, Kentucky on the night of December 7, 2015, stabbing Tipton, this 6-year-old boy, who later died of his injuries, and assaulting the boy's father and sibling. The story has drawn national outrage as many Americans are questioning how a man who brutally killed a 6-year-old could walk free after serving less than half of his 20-year term. He killed a 6-year-old child and he was given a 20-year term. This already, regardless of him walking free early, it's time for Republicans to start getting real serious real fast. And the reason why I'm addressing this is to Republicans, because I know Democrats aren't going to do it. They've got to get serious about the death penalty. They have got to get serious about having capital punishment reinstated. There is no justified reason for a man who murders a child, breaking into a home and murdering a child, for him to ever live. I would say any time after the trial's done. You have the trial, you give the sentence, you share the gospel with him that night, and then his meeting with the Lord is arranged the next day. Probably not eschatologically correct in our theological discussion, but you get my point. See a comment here from Jack Humphrey. Jack, I don't know if this is your first time watching here. I'm not sure what your thoughts are as far as our ministry. I don't know if you if you know much about us. I see your comment though. So social judgment is more important than God's judgment? Absolutely not. God's judgment is the final judgment. It's eternal. But social matters here on this earth are different, distinct from God's. Honestly, the truth is you should be able to see where I'm coming from, because this life is temporary anyways, whether you live to be 5 or 105. We have to have society. We have to be able to have a functioning government. We have to have a functioning community. And in order for that to happen, justice must be done. So if you are someone who commits these heinous crimes, then yes, I am supporting of capital punishment. This is why I wanted to do this show, so you didn't just hear some, sugar-coated evangelical preacher spewing out, loving everybody, just hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Absolutely not. Justice must be done. Now, in the grand scheme of things, though, the greater judgment comes to God. So while society carries out justice and judgment to their capacity, God is the one that carries out justice and judgment in eternity. And so if you have someone who commits a heinous crime, let's say that justice would have truly been done here in the case of the murder of this 6-year-old boy. So Ronald Exantis, he should have received the death penalty. He should have been executed promptly. But if he received the gospel because a minister came to him and shared with him the gospel message, then concerning his righteousness before God, he's going to spend eternity with the Lord, because man is not saved by works. Man is saved by grace through faith in the shed blood and resurrection of Christ. Man's righteous standing with God is eternal. It is distinct and different wholly from man's standing with government. This is not a complicated thing, and it is only confused by evangelicalism and trying to mix in some kind of spiritual kingdom. Jesus told us to just love everyone and never uphold justice. It's a misunderstanding of Scripture. So I hope that understands. Hopefully that helps you understand where I'm coming from there, Jack. David and Bathsheba, David was greatly punished for his actions. David probably would have rather died than what happened. Because of that, blood never left the house of David. Bathsheba's son and David's son died. Great punishment take place, and that was a special dispensation from God. This is why you can't read yourself and build your doctrine from historical examples, because that just doesn't work. I'm not David. You're not David. We are not appointed king to be king over Israel. So you have to discern what is dispensationally for us versus what was a unique way that God intervened. God told Hosea to go marry a woman of whoredom. Jack, do you think you need to go marry a woman of whoredom? If you say no, then you're understanding that was to Hosea. David was a unique position. Don't build your doctrine from a historical event. Otherwise, you're going to be teaching your son to go find a wife of whoredom and marry her. I'm using that word not to be offensive, but that's the word the King James uses, okay? So just hopefully you're understanding where I'm coming from there. So, once again, going back to the story in Kentucky, the child died of his injuries. He assaulted the father and the sibling. And his actions, his conviction was classified as nonviolent, yet he committed a murder. How is this possible? Matt Walsh, who covered this story from the Daily Wire. On Monday night, Daily Wire host Matt Walsh, who has focused extensively on this story this week, reached out to the parole board that signed off on Exantis' parole, seeking more information on how he was allowed to be released after serving less than half of his 20-year sentence. The parole board told Walsh that had no choice but to release Exantis under state law, since he was found not guilty by reason of insanity for murder, and his remaining convictions were classified as nonviolent offenses. All right, so now, here is what happens. You know how you fix this whole insanity deal? You still charge them all the same. If you commit murder in a state of insanity, either life in prison or capital punishment. This is not complicated. I don't know why we're pretending like this is some challenging, difficult thing. There are certain things that prohibit you from just getting to live in society. And if you are not mentally stable enough to not snap, go insane and kill someone, then you should face the same punishment as if you did it completely sober, completely coherent, because you are a danger and threat to society. You cannot be out on the streets. We cannot have people wandering the streets, homeless, what have you, who engage in this kind of behavior. This once again shows and exposes the great level of injustice that is in the court system. Matt Walsh speaking, he stabbed a child to death and then went on to assault the entire family, and yet he is nonviolent under the law because he was only convicted of second-degree assault. The murder didn't count at all because he was not guilty by reason of insanity. So, long story short, how this works is they claim that he's guilty of the assault to the lesser crime, but not guilty of murder because he was insane. That is the story. I'm not even spinning it. I'm not even trying to make it sound more fantastical. That is just the account. So, here's this little boy who is now no longer with us, murdered, I would say with the Lord, being 6 years old. And then his murderer, and these courts are so corrupt that we cannot carry out proper judgment and justice. We have got to get this fixed. I think that the next big push we've got to start making is getting our court systems in order and in line. We've got to vote judges out. You've got to pay attention to voting records and get them out. Get them out of the courts. They should never see the light of day. And we've got to get loud about reinforcing the death penalty. Once again, people say, oh, how unloving, how you're not loving like Jesus. I believe that everybody can be saved. I believe that the worst, vilest offender can receive the gospel But justice must be done from a government standpoint. Otherwise, we're not going to last. We are not in the kingdom. We're not living spiritually in this time in which God's will is perfectly being done on earth as it is in heaven. There is evil in this world. There are evil people who do evil things, and good men must be willing to stand against evil and carry out swift justice. I may just encourage my sons to maybe try to go be judges. I don't know. Paul says, God already set the standard for how we should administer justice on earth. Yeah, those, who say, well, God's not for the death penalty. Have you ever read Leviticus? Ever at one time? Have you ever read the law? The instruction to carry out capital punishment? No, we're not under the law, but is capital punishment ungodly? Is capital punishment immoral? Well, then you're saying God's immoral because He gave the law. No, that's bad doctrine. That's bad hermeneutics. So now, as we look at the sad state of our court system, let's go ahead and look at a governor candidate for Oklahoma. And today, we looked at Drummond last week, I believe. Let's look at McCall. So I believe I think it's Charles McCall is his first name, but I may be wrong there. I can't remember. Yeah, Charles McCall. Charles McCall actually is kind of a more local guy to us. He has spent time in Oklahoma politics. He's a conservative. He's a Republican. And what we're looking at is just some of their stances, some of their positions here. What am I looking for? I've already told you before, things that matter to me are Oklahoma first, small government, state sovereignty is essential. We've got to get away from the big government mind. We've got to defederalize to some degree. That's what we got to do. I think that's a good term to use. Probably shocks some people. And so we have to get away from that. Other things I'm going to be looking for is I think ending property tax is going to be the way to go. I mean, you don't own your property if you have to pay taxes on it, just plain and simple. I would love to see things like that. Obviously, Oklahoma education is going to be an issue. I would like to see rights being given back to the local school districts, let them govern themselves instead of having these massive, bureaucratic organizations like the national or the state Department of Education. So let's see what all Charles McCall has to say. I'm going to say if I see something I like, I'm going to say something that I don't like. He has been in politics for a while, so I could probably look at his voting record. I'm not going to go do all that today. One reason why I'm doing all this, once again, for those of you who are in Oklahoma, you're getting to see me give my thoughts on gubernatorial candidates. Also, it's just a good way to kind of apply the same template for your state, especially if you're those who are more purple states. Like I know we got some friends up there in Minnesota, sorry. And so you need to vote. You need to be voting. So here we go. Let's go ahead and look at his vision. All right, Oklahoma first, America first. Oklahoma stands on the edge of excellence, but getting across that threshold takes the right leader, someone proven. Okay, that one's just some statements there, putting Oklahoma first. I like that. Let's see what that means. So he's got a few different issues here. I'm going to read about this a little bit. Hopefully, is there more to read about, or is that all it says? I guess so. Defending Oklahoma values. You shouldn't have to wonder where your next governor stands. I believe in faith, family, and freedom. I've always backed it up with action. I've protected the unborn, defended religious liberty, and made sure boys stayed out of girls' sports and locker rooms. Okay, that's just some general conservative stuff. I mean, what conservative wouldn't, take that position? I'm looking for something that sets you apart. Remember, we're tired of the status quo. We're tired of what we've had before. I'm looking for someone to be a complete different approach. All right, no more of the same old run-of-the-mill, big talk conservative, but everything just stays status quo. Eliminate state income tax. This is one of his platforms here. We've already delivered the largest tax cut in Oklahoma history. Now we must take the next bold step, fully eliminate the state income tax entirely while keeping property taxes low and protecting core services. Yeah, see, I'm for getting rid of property tax. I would rather you do income tax over property tax. Let us own the land. Let us actually own the land. So Jake Merrick is one of those who's very much pro ending property taxes. And so I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a fan of wanting to keep property taxes there. America First, Oklahoma First. Charles McCall is ready to bring President Trump's America First vision home, defending Oklahoma jobs, freedoms, and values from the radical left. How exactly? I mean, you're talking about like less regulation? Because once again, I do feel like Jake Merrick, you know me, I'm a fan of his. We've had him on the show. He's running for governor. He seems to be more upfront about his thoughts on how to do these things. Eliminating regulation. Oklahoma jobs. Okay, so what about Oklahoma jobs? Like in the oil and gas industry, are we going to defend and help oil and gas? Are we going to stop China from buying up all of our farmland? I mean, what are you doing talking about Oklahoma jobs? I'd like to hear him say some more. I feel like your website should have some other things more to it, I would say. Let's see here. He does have a little bit more here, so maybe I jumped the gun. Good deal. Okay, he does mention this. Yes, we have already passed the strongest immigration laws in the country, but we'll now go even further. I'll also stop foreign adversaries like the Chinese from buying up our land. I'll work to protect the jobs of the hardworking men and women who keep our critically important oil and gas industry going, and I'll always back the blue by keeping our law enforcement funded and respected. Okay. I'm glad he mentioned oil and gas. That's good. Fixing education. Oklahoma shouldn't be stuck at the 49th in education. The resources have been there for some of the required leadership has been absent, but some of the required leadership has been absent. We can follow the success story of Mississippi, focus on reading, science, and math, and stick to a long-term strategy rooted in tutoring, accountability, and outcomes that don't leave our kids behind. As governor, I'll bring in proven experts, not bureaucrats, and ensure we execute a real plan for educational excellence. That also means continuing to support teachers directly and making sure every school, rural, urban, public, private, and charter, has the tools to help students succeed. That sounds fine to me. I think we need to get rid of the State Department of Education. I mean, that's honestly my thoughts. I would like to see the State Department of Education disbanded, and then let the local school boards govern themselves. Expand school freedoms. This is going to be school choice. Every Oklahoma parent deserves the right to decide on the best education for their child, whether that's public, private, charter, or homeschool. I helped make school freedom a reality. Now I'll go to expand it even further and dramatically. We'll give parents even more control, empower teachers, not bureaucrats, and keep woke agendas out of our schools. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. School vouchers. What strings come attached with that? Because the whole point of a private school is you're not beholden to the state. But if you start taking vouchers and state money, then how much does the state start being able to put their thumb on public or private schools? It's a real problem. I don't know that the Republicans have fully thought through this. Jake has taken a very unpopular position that he's right about. That, yeah, if you start taking vouchers to fund private schools start to become not so private. You know what I mean? So let's see. Yeah, and that's the end of his statements there. I don't know. I feel like McCall is a little bit better than Drummond. Drummond is, I feel like he's just very much the run-of-the-mill, what we've gotten lately. These are just my thoughts. I mean, and once again, these candidates are invited on the show. I'd be happy to meet them. And maybe I'm wrong. Mike McCall is more than welcome to, but he doesn't know who I am. Maybe I could reach out to him. He could convince me how he's going to be radically different. I want to end property taxes. I want to see the end to the State Department of Education and just let the local school boards govern themselves. I think the school boards would appreciate that. And I'd be more interested to see how he plans on helping oil and gas while all of our farmland is getting covered in solar panels and wind turbines. Those are just some thoughts. I don't know. I'd like to see him address those things. Right now, he's a front runner in some polling, so we'll see how all that plays out. If you're in Oklahoma, start getting educated. Okay, you've got to get involved here. Okay, let's see. We got a few more comments before I get into a thing about the Pope and King Charles III. I think King Charles III. So we're going to finish the show on a little bit of theology, but I'm going to read a couple comments here. Jack says, isn't everything that happens all a part of God's plan? That is the evangelical mentality, that everything happens according to God's plan. Catholicism would probably also have that mentality as well. I would say the reason we think that is because we read ourselves into certain passages of Scripture. I think God's plan is, right now, for the gospel to go forth and men have the opportunity to receive it. Otherwise, everything is attributed to God, good or evil. And the verses that are used to teach that everything that happens is according to God's plan are verses that are going to be very unique, specific about whether it's Israel. Most of it's going to be about Israel. Certain individuals, maybe it's Pharaoh. It's all about specific instances. It's not creation in general. And that's where I think that we make our doctrinal mistakes here. I don't think that it is God's plan for babies to be murdered in the womb. I think that's evil, and I think that God hates it. I don't think it was God's plan for Adam and Eve to sin. I think God gave them a free choice. And God, in His infinite knowledge, knew that He was going to have a plan for the redemption of creation when Adam and Eve sinned. I think we just have to start taking a more deprogrammed look at the Bible and reading it through the lens of whatever a preacher told you in your ear, and just start reading the Bible for what it says. Ken says 300 acre solar farm going up in Pryor. I mean, this is like good land for cattle farming. Solar is not good for the environment. It destroys the land. You cover it in solar panels, now the land's ruined. Guys, I think there's bad things going on underneath the hood here. Faith and liberty. We got David with us in the house. Matthew 23:23, weightier matters, judgment, mercy, and faith, not keeping the law. Wow, please comment on faith here. Jesus' words, three most key things. Faith, not keeping law, blows my mind. So I know that faith and liberty, David, you're still working on this, this matter of, hey, I teach rightly dividing the Bible. I am crazy, and I'm just inserting that there. But I believe that Israel had to keep the law, and we are not under the law. We're under grace now. So let's see here. Whoso therefore shall swear by the altar sweareth by it, and by all things thereon. And whoso shall swear by the temple sweareth by it, and on him that dwelleth therein. And he that shall swear by heaven sweareth by the throne of God, by him that sitteth thereon. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye pay tithe of mint and nice and cumin. Maybe it's anise, I don't know. And have omitted the weightier matters of the law. So we are talking about the law here. The weightier matters of the law. Judgment. According to the law, you had to carry out judgment. Right? Whether that's stoning, unclean, outside of the camp, you name it, right? Judgment was required under the law. Mercy. There was also mercy under the law. If a man was found to be guilty of a sin, he offers his sacrifice. He's atoned. There's mercy that is under the law. The sacrifice given, whether it's, a dove, a goat, a sheep, a bull, you name it, right? Mercy. Mercy was according to law. According to the law, if that man received mercy, he received mercy, and you could not hold that account against him any longer. And faith. The very first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me, what the Lord said to Israel. So faith has always been essential. Has it been the only thing? No, you've had the law as well. Israel had to keep the law. That's how I would handle that verse there, David. All right, let's see. Paul says, in the age he has stepped away, so to speak, we live in an age of grace and mystery, and God doesn't interject like he used to, at least not on the level that is biblically supernatural. Yeah, I would use the term silence of God to describe our age. I know some would not like that. What do you mean God is silent? Well, he's not writing the Bible anymore. He's given us the Scripture. We don't have any new inspired texts to be adding to the Bible, so God is silent in that way. I don't think that God is giving prophecy today. I don't prophesy. Maybe one of you do. Maybe you should be doing the show. Maybe you should be the pastor if you have the ability to prophesy. God has given us His Word. His Word is complete. His Word is sufficient. So God is also not, intervening in that way, supernatural things. And I know that you can say, I see a miracle every day. I see things that just can't be explained, people being healed and whatnot. And there's amazing stories, and God can do as He pleases. I'm just saying, be very careful anytime you say God did this or God did that. I imagine many people have said, God brought us together, right, in regard to their marriage or their friendship or what have you. And then it all ends in a poorly. But God did it. I don't know. The Bible's very clear when God did something. It tells us. We better not just speculate, right, in our own lives. I know it's not a very popular view. It doesn't give you the warm fuzzies. We'll talk about another thing that's interesting to me. King Charles III prays with Pope Leo in Sistine Chapel. That's the 14th. Since Reformation. And so, that's what happens. They go to the Sistine Chapel. King Charles meets with the Pope. They pray together. I hate this. So first of all, Catholics, no, this does not mean that Catholicism is won and the Reformation, the Protestants, the Reformation has admitted defeat. Catholicism is, it has been spiraling, and it just takes a long time for things to die off. Catholicism is confused. Catholicism is, it's divided and it doesn't even realize it. American Catholics who are super conservative, they would call themselves, mega-based. That's what the kids say nowadays. I don't say that, but that's what people tell me they say. But look at guys, the Vatican's a mess. Pope Leo, he added a prayer room for Muslims. Like, Catholicism's fallen, the SBC's fallen, Catholicism's fallen, it's all fallen, it's all crashing down, okay? I hate this though. Why do I hate it? Because I'm just a fuddy-duddy, stick in the mud, mad about everything? Yes, but in addition to that, I don't want all of Christianity to be in this unified, conglomerated mush of doctrine, okay? I would not go and worship in a Catholic church. I don't hold their doctrine. Now, that being said, Anglicanism, which is the Church of England, is a little bit more akin to Catholicism than others. I mean, it broke off from, it was basically the Catholic Church of England, kind of, and the king was the Pope. But we'll read the article really quickly. King Charles III participated in a public worship service with Pope Leo XIV at the Vatican on Thursday, making the first time a reigning British monarch has attended such a service since the English Reformation nearly 500 years ago. Seated on golden thrones beneath the Michelangelo's famous Last Judgment fresco in the Sistine Chapel. Yuck. As an American, somebody who lives in a country that we fought a war so we don't have to bow down to a king. Yuck. Okay. King Charles and Queen Camilla participated in an ecumenical service. I do not like ecumenicalism. Ecumenicalism is where you have different denominations, doctrines come together to share. If you don't share doctrine, there's no reason to have a service together. You don't agree on soteriology, you don't agree on ecclesiology, you don't agree on eschatology. I mean, what is the point? I mean, you have nothing in common other than you believe in Jesus. That's great. I mean, the Muslims believe in Jesus. They believe he was a prophet. They don't believe he was the Son of God. Catholics don't believe that the death on the cross by Jesus was really once for all. You got to have fresh blood and body of Christ in order to have, forgiveness of sins. Anyways, so yeah, they pray together. Joining Pope Leo XIV, they probably blessed a block of ice. I don't know. Conducting the service was Archbishop of York Stephen Cottrell, Stephen Cottrell, who is the highest-ranking prelate in the Church of England until the is that RT Reverend. I don't know what RT Reverend means. Sarah Mullally is installed as the first female Archbishop of Canterbury next year. Archbishop of Canterbury. Sarah Mullally. Very good for the Anglican Church. Some claim that the service was a symbolic healing of the rift from the Reformation, which manifested politically in England with King Henry VIII, broke from Rome in 1534 after the Pope refused to annul one of his 6 marriages. And on and on and on it goes. I'm just telling you right now, I am not a fan of the Catholics and Anglicans coming together to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Not a fan. I think it's very good. I even though I'm not an Anglican, I think that the breakaway from the Catholic Church, even if it wasn't for great motives, it was at least good to get us out from under the thumb of Catholicism. And then there were further of those who separated, those who protested the Church of England. We've got to get away from this big unification thing, all right? We don't need a one world Christian order. That would be horrible for us. It'd be a terrible idea. We need small local congregations. That's what we need, because it's not open to the corruption, the power, the money. Also, you are free to hold whatever doctrine you want because you ain't got to appeal to the masses. I have nothing in common with the Pope. Almost nothing, except that we're American, and I guess, yeah, we would agree that Jesus died and rose again. Even though this Pope is so progressive, I almost wonder. I don't know. I'm worried about the Pope's salvation. So, that's the state of things right now, a land of injustice. I don't know how Oklahoma's going to turn out in the gubernatorial election. And the Pope and the King of England are praying together. What are you gonna? You got dogs and cats living together? Who knows what's going to happen next? It's a good thing. Sorry, my right eye's a little bit itchy. Okay, you didn't see that. I don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of years, but I tell you what we're going to be doing, as long as I have anything to do with it, we are going to be defending sound Bible doctrine, rightly dividing the word of truth, unapologetically defending traditional, biblical, conservative values. Hopefully we can have some influence on churches. Hopefully we can have some influence in politics. I'm going to do the best I can, all right? And they will pry my King James Bible and Glock 19 out of my cold dead hands, all right? I'm feeling a little bit fiery on a Friday. Can we call it Fiery Friday, in which I just get really amped up? And I hope I get you really amped up, because these things matter. You need to pay attention to what's going on in your state. What ways are your courts in your state failing to uphold justice? And what can you do for your church? If you would like to support our ministry, all this is made possible by you. You give me the ability, whether it's the camera, whether it's the computer, it's this fancy schmancy soundboard that I'm using right here, or soundboard, streaming board, you name it, the microphone, even the mug provided by my mom. Thanks, Mom. You make all this possible. I can't do it without you. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do this. On Sunday, we'll be continuing our guide through the Greek Scriptures. We're going to knock out 2 John, 3 John, and Jude. 3 short books. We'll get them all done on Sunday morning. We're going to do Hosea session 10? I'm not sure. But we'll be covering Hosea starting in chapter 5. And then get ready. We're going to be getting ready to release information about the Bible conference in the coming weeks. Probably expect by 1st of November to start having some key information, start getting it on your mind. You can start getting it on the calendar and everything else. I agree with David on this for sure. Catholicism is flat out another gospel. I agree. It's a works-based salvation is what it is. Accursed, love the Catholic and hate Catholicism. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Michael Knowles is one of my favorite political commentators. One of the best compliments I've ever received is when somebody kind of compared me to they said, you're kind of like the rightly dividing Michael Knowles. And I took that as a great compliment, but he is very wrong on doctrine. Yeah. So we have to address it. We've got to be honest about it. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate you. Thank all of you for joining us today. I hope that you have a great rest of your Friday. I hope you have a good weekend. Enjoy time with your loved ones, your friends, you name it. Join us again on Sunday morning, and we'll continue to be doing live streams. I know it's a little bit all over the place. I'm a young father. I've got a bunch of kids. I really do, and so life's a little bit crazy, but don't worry. We're not going anywhere. We've got a lot in store. I'm motivated. I'm fired up. We're going to be getting work done here at Shields and Arrows, markbazeministries.org. If you want to contact me, markdbaze@gmail.com is the current email address. I'll put it in the comments below. Thank you all so much. We'll see all of you later.